The world is being reshaped by technology, automation, and constant disruption. And it's more relevant than ever to upgrade yourself and to be up to date with things. Well, our conversation is about how this is impacting leadership and how leaders need to change from within. Our guest today is one of the most sought after speakers in India and across the globe for leadership, for transformation, and disruption, Simerjeet Singh. He's also known as the disruption coach, and his work has been focusing on helping teams and leaders to unlearn, relearn, and reinvent. Simerjeet, welcome to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Kunal. Looking forward.
So, you often say that disruption or change happens with self disruption. Can you tell us a little more about this and what does this actually mean from a leader's point of view who's leading a team of people?
Great question right off the bat. I think you took the hint when he said action. Self-disruption is the hardest form of change because essentially you're rocking a smooth sailing boat. Everything's going fine. Your career's doing well, your company's doing well, and you say, I can sense something as a leader that this thing that is working fine today probably won't be doing so well in 1 year's time. So before we are forced to change by external circumstances, as your leader, I'm going to create some pain here. I'm going to shake things up, and that is self-disruption. And this is not just for leaders. This is for young people also. This is for entrepreneurs also. This is for all age groups. Self-disruption is the hardest form. It's letting go of your old version so you can create something new. Swami Vivekananda, he said it beautifully, and he said, when the flower turns into the fruit, the flower must die so that the fruit can take birth. And that's what self-disruption is. It's letting go of ideas, practices, mindsets that are working fine now. And that's why it's hard to do, because they're working fine now, but they might not be working so well in 6 months from now. So it's that anticipation, that practicing detachment with that thing, the art of letting go, the art of reinventing. And in fact, I'm sure most of our viewers might already be aware, self-disruption was the subject of the Nobel Prize in Economics last year. And they came to this, the whole research, the whole study was around that sustained periods of economic growth have a lot to do with disruption. Disruption brings with it something new emerges. In fact, if the topic was creative destruction, that was the exact term, creative destruction. And it's a beautiful term because it's a dichotomy in the term itself, creative destruction, right? You're destroying something that's not working so well so that something new can take birth. We should all look into it, especially as we enter into a new year, because the month of January, I've spoken about it often, is named after a Roman god called Janus. And Janus is a two-faced it has two faces fused into one. A young face looking towards the future and a wise, mature face looking towards the past, fused into one. That's what leaders need to be, not just in the beginning of the new year, but every now and then, to be able to look forward to the future with enthusiasm and joy and anticipation, but also to incorporate the learnings of the past, but not to be a prisoner of the past.
That's so beautifully put. I mean, anticipating the storm and then doing the right course correction before you actually walk into that storm.
Right.
And so if a leader is feeling outdated, if he's feeling disconnected and he's anticipated the storm, now what is the first step towards that right course correction?
First step is to be honest with yourself, with your team members, with saying, we don't know. This is new territory. I don't know yet, but I will find out. And that's what Carol Dweck calls the growth mindset, the not yet mindset, which means I don't know how to use this but yet at the moment, but I will. That is that you still have the faith in yourself that you might not have the knowledge of this thing today, but you can develop the competency as you move forward. So the first step is honesty, authenticity, combined with humility to learn, combined with curiosity of a beginner. The Japanese in their martial arts tradition have a wonderful term called shoshin, which means a beginner's mind. And the beginner's mind, what is the beginner's mind? It's an expert who's able to think like a beginner. An expert, somebody who has the expertise of somebody who spent their whole life to a craft, but also to have the mindset of a beginner, which means I'm ready to learn new things. My ego is not preventing me from learning new things. I don't have additional baggage regarding my title or the number of years spent in the industry, etc., etc. Because in a changing world, these things can be your biggest enemies. These walls that you build, the fortresses that you build, oh, I'm a graduate of so and so school, or I spent 20 years in the industry, I've seen it all. Nobody's seen it all, right? And that mindset prevents you from being agile, from learning, from changing and adapting. So, authenticity, humility, curiosity, the spirit to experiment, the spirit to learn, the spirit to connect with people and share that emotional pain of the uncertainty, because it's not just you as the leader, everybody else is going through the same uncertainty. So if you guys can go together and say, hey, in your huddle, in your team huddle, we don't know this, it's new territory, but let's find out together. Let's go on a new quest. Not only will it engage people more, it'll fire up their enthusiasm, but who knows, you might just discover your next growth trajectory.
But what are these leaders really afraid of? When some people, it's important to not close yourself off. Not wall yourself around with what you think is the be all and end all wisdom. What are these people afraid of? Why are they resisting change?
Afraid of being wrong, afraid of being wrong, afraid of that's a fixed mindset. So in Carol Dweck's terms, the fixed mindset people will not ever put them into a situation where they will expose their vulnerabilities. There's a curtain, the window dressing is done, the perfection is there, and there are a lot of pockets which, if exposed, will expose the vulnerabilities of the leader, of the flaws of the leader. And we have to be open about it. No one's perfect. The ability to, they're afraid of putting themselves in situations where they don't feel in control or don't feel in charge. But that's exactly where you're going to grow, right? So essentially, you're walling yourself off from all the growth areas. Dangerous thing to do. Another thing that most leaders are afraid, why they're afraid of self-disruption or why they're afraid of change in general, is because it's working fine now, right? Simerjeet, why take that big risk when our product, we are the market leaders? Hello, you might be the market leaders today, but some kid sitting in a garage might be coming up with the next big thing. And you could be completely outdated in a couple of months' time. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about a change in policy? Have you thought about a change in competition and R&D, some new product, something that could completely disrupt your market leadership position today? So I think an Urdu shair wrote it beautifully. I don't know the name, where he said, तुझसे पहले भी इस तख्त पर जो शख्स ताजो नशीं था, उसको भी अपना खुदा होने का इतना ही यकीन था.
क्या बात है.
तुझसे पहले भी जो शख्स इस तख्त पर ताजो नशीं था, उसको भी अपना खुदा होने का इतना ही यकीन था. So sometimes people develop that God-like sense of, that, oh, we are the market leaders. I think the CEO of Palm Pilot famously made this mistake when a journalist went up to him and said, Apple is launching smartphones. And he smirked and he laughed. And he said, we are the smartphone guys. We've spent years researching and building in the now extinct Palm Pilot. They are PC makers. We're not afraid of them. And we know what the history, how history played itself, how things change after that. Apple is today the biggest smartphone maker. Palm Pilot is extinct. So to never allow that, whether it's your R&D, your product expertise, your market leadership, even your personal competency, your personal intellectual sharpness as a leader, don't take any of these things to become a wall between you and what lies ahead or what can still yet be done.
Excellent. You're talking about growth mindset and you're talking about disruption. How can a leader actually incorporate that in his or her everyday behavior?
That's a good question. How can growth mindset not be the subject of a keynote speaker, but be more involved in everyday behaviors?
Yes.
I would say the not yet mindset again. Yeah. Have a list of things you want to do. You're not comfortable with them. You're not competent clearly, but you can say, not yet. I mean, I haven't done it yet. The yet mindset, right? I haven't done it yet, which means it's on my list. I will experiment with it. As a leader, to put yourself in situations where you're vulnerable a little bit more, right? So you can learn. As a leader, to flip the script every now and then. As a professional speaker, this is what I do before I speak. Day before or before maybe during the lunch break, I go and sit in one of the chairs of the conference hall. So I can just take it in and see, what does this stage look like from the audience perspective? So I can figure out what would be the best place for me to stand. What should it sound like? So can you do the same for somebody working in your company every now and then? Put yourself in their shoes and see what's what needs to change, and what needs to evolve. So the growth mindset can be practiced on a daily basis by listening to feedback, by having feedback channels, having feedback mechanisms available, by learning, by experimenting, by failing. If this message comes from the top that it's okay that not all experiments will succeed, it's okay that some experiments will not yield anything good, everybody develops what organizational scientists call psychological safety. Psychological safety. If there is psychological safety in a group, people are more willing to come up with new ideas because there's no fear of being laughed at.
Yes.
If your children at home have psychological safety around the marks they score, they will be more willing to pursue alternate careers, right? So that becomes a win-win situation.
So what you're essentially saying, leadership is not very different from parenting in a certain
There's
way.
a lot of similarities, yeah.
And so you're not supposed to rest on your past laurels. You have to be open. You have to be open to ideas. And I think vulnerability is a very interesting quality, because as a leader, like you said, you don't want to be wrong. You don't want to be vulnerable. You don't want to show yourself or show that side of yourself to other people, especially people who are working in your team. But I think post-pandemic, the way people are working has changed. Hybrid mode of working is now a reality.
I'm not a big fan.
But I think engagement is dropping overall.
Right.
So what can you tell us about that? And how can leaders really, bring back engagement?
Engagement numbers are shocking right now, especially for India. They say 1 in 2 is actively looking for a new job, and they don't know why. It's just like, I want to change, I don't want to be here, I don't know why, I don't know what I'm looking for, but there's this general sense of discontent. There is a general sense of mismatch between what employees want and what corporations are ready to provide. There's a huge gap, especially with millennials entering the workforce more so, and Gen Zs, and with all of the new expectations that come in there. So I think what can you do as a leader to improve the engagement is to talk about the purpose a little bit more, and have a purpose beyond the profits. Talk to them more about what sort of impact are your product and services creating. If you run a corporate hospital, for example, how often do you actually record a story of somebody who recovered from their illness thanks to your team, thanks to your medical care? How often does your rank and file get to hear from them? And that's very important. That's critical, right? To be able to put people in touch with the larger picture, with the bigger picture of what, so if they see that, if they just feel like a component who's walking in every day, doing what's assigned to them, it becomes very, very challenging. They don't develop that connect with the bigger picture. So that's one of the ways. And I think the message has to come from the top that this is not just a transaction. We're not in a transaction that you come and work for me and I pay you money. It works. And that's how many companies work. But there's got to be more than that. If you promise transformation too, that is, as a leader, if you invest in mentoring, in coaching, in talking to them about their future plans, in talking to them about how their work matters, if you're able to invest a little bit of additional emotional, spiritual, mental energy into their development, I think we'll be able to do a lot better.
Put in a lot more humanity rather than just focusing on numbers. And tell us something about the EQ, the emotional quotient, and how that impacts the way a person leads.
Do you know people are getting married to chatbots? It happened in Japan recently. A young girl getting married to a chatbot, proper ceremony. Why is that happening? Because chatbots don't have any mood swings. And, and if you've ever tried the AI, the voice feature of those, they sound very nice, and always they're sort of mirroring it back to you. They're giving you exactly what you need to hear. Finally, human beings have someone that tells them exactly what they want to hear. It's so polite every time. It's hard not to fall in love with chatbots, but it's very important to understand here that we're competing against technology that is becoming more human than we would have imagined. That is taking into mind, see how the inflections of the tone of voice of some of these chatbots, right? While human beings are not learning, those are human skills that machines are doing better at. And we human beings, we're not considering, we call these the soft skills, meant for a little HR training somewhere. The soft skills: eye contact, a smile, how are you, how's your day, how's your weekend, how are things at home, or how things working out for that project, etc., etc. Those, that little, oh, that's a small talk. We are focused business person. We don't believe in small talk. We don't believe in moments of humor. Well, the research says if two people laugh together, that's the shortest neural connection. The shortest way to connect two brains is to have a laugh together. We don't do that anymore because we are efficient, right? We don't want to meet in person anymore because we're there on the Zoom calls, and all I can see is a black box with your name written on it. We're missing out on the opportunities to connect. And I think EQ is huge. And I believe it'll be a distinguishing factor for leaders of the future. Will be EQ, communication skills, envisioning skills, articulation, communication. Those sort of things are going to be the distinguishing factors, because all of the things will be done better by AI and algorithms.
So we've been talking about empathy. We've been talking about setting the tone right, having a little more humanity.
Yeah.
It boils down to culture,
Yeah.
and so how can a leader ensure that he's setting up, he or she is setting up the right culture in the workplace?
It's very interesting you speak about culture, and I believe that's a deciding factor. After the motivational speaker has delivered the talk, after you've published all the posters and put them on the wall, I've seen people standing in front of the poster which says customer service with a smile, and the person wasn't smiling. So posters obviously don't work, right? Culture works. Culture works because culture is the unwritten rule, or the unspoken rule. It's the way we do things around here. The more people do something in a certain way, the more a newcomer is inclined to follow them, right? So as a leader, I think culture should be one of your at the top of your priority list, because it's more powerful than traditional trainings. I often joke, I say, HR departments create a very nice orientation program to welcome newcomers in. 7 days, we take you to a nice resort. We talk about the vision, mission of the company, PowerPoints, great speakers, nice lunches. And then an old timer from the company comes and says, hey, how's the orientation program going? And say, very well. We've learned about this about the company. And the old timer says, no, all that is good. Let's go for a cigarette outside and I'll tell you how things actually work around here, right? Let me show you how things actually work around here. And all of a sudden they have their attention. And all that was taught inside the conference room is forgotten, and they're listening to what this person is telling them, right? So what sort of stories will your people pass on to newcomers about the company? That's very important. What sort of behaviors do they pick up? Arvind Eye Hospital is a case study that I often talk about, and they say even the doctors, when they walk in the morning, if they see something that is dropped on the floor, they pick it up and put it in the dustbin. Now, if you're a nurse, if you're a janitor, if you're somebody who's assisting, and you see the doctor or the surgeon pick up something on the floor and put it in the dustbin, you don't need a lecture to tell you that you need to put it in the dustbin, right? Actions are more powerful than words. So as a leader, you need to, and as your team, your senior team, you need to model that behavior more often so people can actually see what it looks like. That's how you build culture. And then you reinforce it with posters and speeches and other material. But the material alone, culture is not an app that can be downloaded. It has to be built, and it has to be built by the energy, the enthusiasm, the belief of the founders, of the people who are driving the bus.
So obviously now we've been using this term leaders and leadership quite a lot. But if you were to just explain it to a common man or a person who's coming up in his career and wants to look at leading, a team or even a single individual, what would you define leadership as?
That's a great question, because this word is thrown across very loosely, and it probably to many people signifies larger than life image, somebody who's 6 feet 2 inches tall, and somebody who will just magically solve all your problems, somebody who knows everything, and somebody who will inspire you. And I'm reminded of Mel Gibson's speech in The Braveheart, and that's for all of you to watch. But I think the modern definition, or the timeless definition of leadership is this: can you, when the situation requires, take off your jacket, roll up your sleeves, and solve the root cause of problems so that everybody moves forward, right? So problem solving is one. Can you tell your team why we're doing this? Why does it matter? How will it help? Can you make meaning out of chaos? Can you rally people behind a cause where the outcomes are uncertain? Is your conviction in that far-fetched vision so powerful that others can't see it yet, but they will believe you? And they will move forward towards that aspirational future together, right? If I were to articulate the definition of leadership, it is the ability to roll up your sleeves, to solve root causes of problems, to volunteer and to solve them, and to also be free of appreciation, applause, and approval. Because leadership, as Marshall Goldsmith says, is not a popularity contest. So if you're a prisoner to appreciation, approval, and applause, you won't be a very good leader, because you're constantly seeking that everybody claps for me and approves what I have to say. Only then we'll move forward. But a lot of the stuff you will be talking about is uncertain. Leaders are dealing with hope and vision, things which don't exist today. How can everybody be so excited about things which don't exist today? People are hardly excited about what already exists. I look at my bank balance and say, no, this doesn't excite me, right? How can I be excited about something that I cannot see? That's where a human being like you and me, Kunal, comes in and says, you know what? If you could get to this amount, if you could get to $100,000, imagine you could go to $1 million. And what is the work ethic behind it? What are those things you need to, and you help them plug that gap and that excitement and that hands-on mentoring, somebody who's beside you, who's with you, but who's ahead of you, who listens to you, but he also listens to his inner self, somebody who can manage those dichotomies of this is real, but this is not, and we are going forward and we're still not seeing any progress. How do you motivate people under those circumstances? You need somebody who can see the unseen, who can believe in that, who believes in herself or himself, and because of that belief, other people follow them, who can build that credibility. And that is still required today. AI cannot do that job. You and I can.
Is that where inner work comes in? You talk a lot about inner work.
Absolutely.
So is that to have that vision, to have that clarity, and to be able to share that vision and clarity with your team?
True. I'm pretty sure a lot of people might not have seen a lot of leaders do inner work. What is inner work? I mean, we all know outer work, work that creates. We're shooting this podcast here today is outer work. But what's the inner work? The inner work is the unseen mental, intellectual, spiritual preparation for what lies ahead. And you have to do it every single day. Most important inner work a leader has to do is to be able to answer the question, who am I? Who am I? What do I stand for? Where are we trying to go? What are we trying to do? If you lack clarity as a leader, your team will also not have clarity. If you lack conviction as a leader, your team will never be convinced about it. And it's not something you're getting drunk on so that they can believe in you. It's something that is coming from an inner fountain that you have cultivated by removing the clutter. So as leaders, it's very important to declutter, not just your wardrobes and your office files, but also declutter your head and find out what's truly important this quarter, this year. If nothing else could be done and we could just do 3 things, what would those 3 things be? Do you know those 3 things? If you were to meet somebody in the elevator and that person asks you, who are you? Would you be able to immediately have a clear answer that's not just factual, but also inspirational? An answer that inspires you every morning, right? So that's inner work. Can you see the unseen? Can you envision it? Do you believe in it? Can you read the current trends and project them into the future and make predictions, even if you may be proved publicly wrong? But can you still dare to make a prediction that this is how things are going to be and therefore we're going to do this, right? If you have some of those qualities, or if you're cultivating, and you can all cultivate, I believe we can all sit down and cultivate those qualities in order to be able to lead other people. And that's inner work. And it's hugely important because guess what? Inner work makes you more efficient at outer work.
So you talk about clarity and you talk about decluttering,
Yeah.
and that is probably one of the most important parts of doing that inner work, and to first to declutter, to have that clarity so that you can move forward in terms of where you want to go.
Right.
Is there something that you can give us in terms of decluttering? What is the best way? How do you identify the clutter and how do you separate that?
That's a great question. I call it the signal to noise ratio. You might have heard the term before, signal to noise ratio. You got to identify what's noise, what's signal. right? So this is noise. I ignore this. This is signal. Signal is something that will help me achieve my goals. So sit down and prioritize and pick out the most important things and sense the trends that are coming in, and from there craft your story and identify what you need to let go of, and even at times identify the people you need to let go of. I know this is sounding harsh, but this is sometimes, and this is one of the first founding principles of leadership. John Maxwell talked about it. Identify who gets on the bus and who needs to get off the bus. There are people who might not be adding value, or who might even be taking away value by their presence. And if you don't have it in you to let go of those people, you will not be a very effective leader, because leadership is not a popularity contest. It's not about becoming popular, it's about becoming effective. So decluttering, the same, whatever principles apply to your wardrobe, I think some of those principles apply to leadership as well. What should we start doing that we are not currently doing? What should we stop doing where we are wasting our energy and our time, which is not our core strength area? What should we continue doing, as in what is the soul of this enterprise, or what is the soul of this organization, right? Sometimes schools get lost in doing so many additional activities that they forget that the real purpose of a school is education. Hello, right? So same way businesses too, sometimes we get carried away in so many directions that we forget what is the real purpose of starting this enterprise, the soul, as Howard Schultz called it in his book, when how Starbucks found its way again. So 3 very simple steps. What should you start doing, which you're not doing at the moment? What should you stop doing, where you might be wasting your resources, your money, your time, energy? What should you continue doing? That is, what is your soul? What is your DNA, organizational DNA?
So I think it's very important to have a clear mission statement. From that will flow the culture, from that will stem the decluttering, and to have that clarity of where your organization needs to go.
Just a word of caution around the mission statements is also to not get too deeply entrenched in them, so that you're not able to sense the changes in the environment, right? And I have often seen that one of the traits of high performing leaders is that they're very unpredictable, that they change their mind all the time, right? And I think maybe that's some of the things we come packaged with, right? That the ability to sense there's something working at an intuitive level. And Steve Jobs, for example, would not hold these closed meetings with people to find out how the products will do. He'll just launch, because he knew this is what people need. I know people need this, and he's just going to launch it without doing any focus groups and all that. So at some stage, people develop that intuitive sense, which they begin to trust. And I think, but also a word of caution there: don't get carried away with that intuitive hunch too much. There's people around you, and if you're surrounded always by people who completely agree with you all the time, that's a dangerous trap to be in. So yeah, stay clear of that. And
is this intuition something that can be cultivated within a leader?
Definitely. It can be it'll emerge with the number of years you spent in that environment, with the amount of different things you expose to yourself, and with your passion for what you do, with your ability to study trends and things like that. You will develop that intuitive hunch. At times it could be wrong, but it's something that naturally emerges over the course of time.
But it's important not to let that become the wall that is preventing you from going forward.
No.
And it's important that you make sure that you're changing with the time.
We don't like walls. We all want bigger tables. Don't build fences. Build a bigger table. Invite more people for lunch or dinner or drinks or whatever, or coffee or whatever is your thing. No, walls are dangerous. Leaders isolating themselves, dangerous.
So before we wrap up this conversation, are there 3 things that you would advise people who are moving into 2026, who are wanting to be leaders, who are already leaders, who need to be a better version of themselves?
Wonderful question. Number 1, guys, communicate, don't inform. We're all just informing more often and not communicating, sending emails, memos. This is information. Human beings, we crave for communication. Talk to me, have a conversation back and forth, right? And sometimes not always with an agenda, sometimes without an agenda to see. So connect more with people at a human level. That's very important. Understand that people still are the backbone. Don't get carried away with this whole AI thing. There's a firm, I think somewhere in Scandinavia, who fired 800 of their customer service staff just to bring a lot of them back a few weeks later using AI agents. So I know AI is exciting, but don't just go about firing all your people yet, right? You need them. Your people are still the backbone of, and I think good people will always continue to be the backbone of great enterprises and great teams. So the ability to spot one, cultivate one, develop them. And number three, mentoring, because do it for yourself, be your own mentor, coach, hire a coach, get a mentor, and then pass it on to other people. Because we're living in times where nothing is certain or nothing is static. It's always changing. It's a very dynamic, fluid environment. So to develop that culture of learning in the organization, I think is very important. Hey, send a text message to your team. There's a new tool I found. Try it. Give it a shot. I found this on this video. Give this a shot. And some of them will be embarrassing, and some of them will change the way you work. And that's how we learn.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So have great culture. Be open to suggestions. Be open to being wrong and experimenting, and be open to being innovative. Spot the storm, make the course correction, and then take your team with you. Like you said, communication is key.
Yep.
Not just informing. It's not a one-way street. It has to go both ways.
Right.
And at the end of it all, I think you will emerge a better leader in 2026.
I am pretty sure. If you have the desire to be a better leader, you now have access to more tools than ever before. You have videos and podcasts and books and mentors and coaches and Instagram reels and YouTube shorts on how to become a better leader. All you need is the desire and the belief that by learning and by inner work and by developing, you too can become a better leader.
That's wonderful. Thank you for spending time with us and giving us these wonderful pieces of wisdom.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.